Okay, welcome everybody to the February 27th Utility Committee meeting. We're getting started with Utility Committee packets.
Okay, so at the last meeting, I know that Jay had asked, the ability to get packets in advance. Mm-hmm. And so this has been kind of the unofficial, utility committees changed quite a bit in the last 11 years. And so this is how I'd like to proceed. So I'm going to basically, hopefully get a yay or nay. If we have, one is, we never used to do advanced packets for any of the committees. It was a few years ago that then there was a request from the Whittletons that they start getting packets. And so Nick was able to comply because he has staff that does that. Public Works, we're generally generating this stuff last minute, like I said at the last meeting. So here's my promise to you, or here's how I want to proceed. When we have items on the agenda that truly need, that you're going to have to make a decision on, then I will get those packets out in advance. Or even if it's just portions of, if there's something that you really need to read and digest because we're going to ask for some sort of recommendation to do something, I will get those in advance. If the packets are just informational, which quite honestly, Utility Committee, once we got that, there was that body of work a few years ago when we were doing the whole treatment plant and all the agreements, and we were trying to figure out so that it was a uniform ownership with all the properties and doing those manual on adjustments and quitclaim deeds and then the operating agreement to create the entity. If we're doing something like that where definitely we need to get those out in advance. It seems like since we kind of really took that big bite out of the rhinoceros, why can I think, why am I spacing out on that word, rhinoceros? That it seems like Utility Committee lately has been just more informational updates. So my preference would be is if these are going to be more just we're updating you. I think I'd like to keep doing what we're doing.
I can live with that. I think it may have been an expectation on my part, not understanding the committee structure here at the city as opposed to other meetings. So I was more concerned that if I was missing something or quite frankly, I don't like being behind the 8 ball.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so if it's like, hey, here we are, we're going to be bringing things up, discussing them, then I'm fine with that. I probably should have reached out to the committee chair and asked.
Probably.
But I'll learn that lesson.
But one thing that's different now too is that we're in the middle of working on our projects. For years, all we did was talk about them, and we were planning, and now we are active. And so what's really changed, I think, with the committee is that we're getting updates on what's going on. Public Works is pretty swamped with the huge projects that we're in the middle of. And that is what has changed, because I remember many years we sat and talked about what we were going to be doing, and now we're doing them.
Right.
And everybody really has a huge workload. So, and you can see a lot of what we get are dealing with contracts, overages, and all of those changes, which are a little bit sensitive. You have to be careful about some of the things going out too early or whatever. So, I think that there's a balance.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I'm suggesting is
I'm fine.
Just, that we'll, things that I guess, Thomas and I can definitely determine if this is like a new topic or if it's pretty heavy reading that we really need you to come up on speed, we'll get it to you in advance.
Like the new zone.
Yeah.
Well,
codes.
I'm kind of, I hate to say living in the past, but one thing that was made clear to me was that the expectation about coming to meetings prepared as opposed to my predecessor. So I just, I always, so.
Yeah, I guess the key thing is don't ever feel like, so if we, like in this packet, there's not going to be anything here that we're going to ask you to make any decision on. This is the introduction to the topic. Right. If there were a new topic and it was just, like if we have something new on here, like these House bills, So this is just an introduction. You
Right.
can go back and read it. We're not asking you to make a decision.
Right.
But take these home and read them and come up, post-meeting as opposed to pre-meeting.
Right.
So,
And to your credit, Jay,
Mhm.
you do look to get into the meat of everything, and
Oh, I
you do
know
want to
that.
be prepared.
Yeah.
So that is nice to have someone
Well, I
that
know that,
interested.
and I'm not, yeah, but I'm just saying is it's, so.
Yeah.
I just wanna make
so
sure
I know
I'm
this is
carrying my weight.
reactive, but I also
Yeah, I'm
know that
fine.
we're usually at the very 11th hour, we're trying to pull stuff together
Sure.
for the packet. And I don't want to, Nick created when he yielded to the request because he had staff to do it. Like Carrie, she's just taken over the thing, so she has the time to send out the request, put the packs together, get them out early. We don't have that. So it's great that he has that, but it's not the world we live in right now. So 720 is different than 216. So, okay, well, I appreciate your,
And I grabbed a packet to give to Fred, so
Yeah.
everyone will have one.
so speaking of, a new topic, but again, it's just, this is just some House bills that Thomas thought we should be just looking at, keeping track of. So I guess Thomas, with that, I've got three. I've got 1680 House Bill, Senate Bill 5145, and Senate Bill 5657, and then you've got another general summary that you had that the WOOC put out. So I guess with that,
Yeah, so I think that one of the things that we wanted to try to do, not to spend a ton of time on it or belabor it in any way, we want to be a little bit more aware of what's coming through the legislature as we plan, do future planning, and we're looking at whether it's projects or regulations. We just don't want to be headed down a path that could change, whether the change is good or bad. And so from time to time, I think we're going to bring to you guys some of the bills that we're looking at. In addition, I am a member of the Washington Water Utility Council, and they have their own lobbyists and legal counsel, and they provide us with information that says, hey, you should be looking at this. So it's really informational. I don't know per se if any of these bills are going to get through. This is more a snapshot of, for the first time in a long time, we're starting to see some legislative push to fund public infrastructure, specifically water and sewer. There's talks about the Public Works Trust Fund being reestablished, which is exciting, and that's a tool that we had in our toolbox for a long time that was taken away, mainly because education was unfunded.
and on that note, there's a chance that I'll be on the Public Works Board.
Yes. When do you find out?
Not for a while, but apparently, because I received some local support, I got like 10 out of 11 first place votes, so.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah. So hopefully I'll be on that board, which helps get money forward.
Yeah, for the Public
So-
Works Trust Fund, and
So,
and so we'll be bringing you these things periodically. There really wasn't anything in this first round of the legislature that was too controversial as it relates to regulations. There was some stuff on, or the Department of Health and the legislature are working on new regulations for deep underground injection wells, which us as purveyors are deathly afraid of.
fracking.
Well, there's a bill out there right now that's they think is going to go through that's going to ban all fracking in Washington State.
That's Senate Bill 5145.
which is awesome from a environmental and water resource perspective. But the underground injection wells are being pushed by ecology. They're being pushed by stormwater treatment to get stormwater back in the ground. Our concern is how deep are these? What are their locations in proximity to our aquifers? And that water's not being treated for things like opioids or birth control or things like that. So
What was that thing we heard about the treatment plant? They want us to start treating for.
Yeah.
Right here on this one, 56.
Oh, that's 56, 57. That's
Yep.
right.
So
How do you do that?
So there's a bill out there right now. So I reached out to West Sound and I said, hey, let's keep our eye on this, because if this moves through, we could be talking about treatment plant, expansion.
Well, how would you? I mean, it's
Yeah,
in
what would you
suspension.
do?
Well, I'm not a
Chemist.
opioid treatment chemist, but we want to know. I mean, any time things like this come out, they say, okay, we're going to craft this language, it's going to go into law, and then you've got X amount of years to prepare to comply. But the lobbyists right now are pushing back, saying we got the cart before the horse. I think drinking water's done it very well over the years, where they say, hey, we recognize there's an issue, let's investigate and put some science behind this and let that inform the law. What the legislature's trying to do is have a law and then we react, and we don't want to be reactionary like that. We're not saying it's not a problem, we're saying we don't understand the problem. And we don't understand what that treatment would look like, and we don't understand what the effects are on, Sinclair in our case. So I think it'll get killed. It's always nice when you've got people like Seattle Public Utilities and Tacoma Public Utilities that are a bigger player, and they don't want this. I'm not speaking for them. I'm just saying, it's not that we don't recognize that there could be an issue. We just want to understand it before we make laws, and then we have to. So, anyways, like I said, more informational than anything. I'll probably be bringing some stuff from the WUC, if it's relative or important. There is a case right now that I'll briefly touch on that we're watching. King County has resurrected some really old RCWs that they believe gives them the authority to charge rent for utilities within their right-of-way. And so they are trying to impose through franchise agreements that anybody who's got a water main, a comm line, a fiber line, pay them rent to allow them to have that utility in their road. Now it's being challenged, and we have one of the nice things about being part of the WUC is that we've got all this legal counsel that the city doesn't have to pay for, which is really nice, and that's what these people do for a living. And so they're working on a briefing paper, and we'll see what happens. But if that case is upheld in Superior Court, counties all around would have the authority to charge rent for their right-of-way. The argument that's being made right now, there's a couple of different arguments, retail service area, different things, but one of the arguments that's being made right now is that right-of-way is publicly owned, and therefore it cannot be
Rented out.
Mm-hmm.
That it is for the betterment of the public, and therefore it is not a revenue-generating asset. So we'll see. It's going to be fascinating to watch. Like I said, more informational.
Who's the city again? I'm sorry.
It's King County.
King County. Okay.
Yeah, and so you've got like Waswood, who's the Association of Water and Sewer Districts, who are more in opposition to it, obviously. But it could create some huge legal precedents. So as we hear updates, we'll keep you informed.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. You're talking
Would that be
wet
new?
utilities and dry utilities.
Well, would that be new utilities? I mean, would they,
It would be
the old ones
existing.
would, really?
Yeah.
They could go back and start charging?
Yeah.
How would they even know in a lot of cases what's all there? I mean, people
Well,
do
they would just look at, like, for dry utilities, they'd say Puget Sound Energy, Cascade, you have franchise agreements,
Right.
and they would basically just start. Somebody would have to determine a value and assess how much within, like the city of Port Orchard, we would assess whatever the rate is, how many square feet, how many square miles, whatever.
And to be honest, I don't think that I do not believe that it will be upheld. It's convoluted and it's not easy to say one way or the other, but franchise agreements by statute only provide a provision for you to collect your administrative costs to do a franchise agreement. What Kitsap County did is they adopted an ordinance outside of that, and so there's some monopoly laws that say that that's an unfair taking. So I think hopefully what you could see is that the Superior Court rules that the ordinance was an illegal act and that the county did not have the legislative authority to adopt that ordinance. We'll see. Anyways, if you guys have questions, you know where we live.
Right.
This is probably a squirrel, so if it is, just let me know. Several years ago, somebody told me that the bills to watch out for are the ones that get introduced, and then 5 years down the line, they keep coming back and gathering momentum. You know, some people think are far out there. I was just curious. Besides this one, which sounds pretty far out there, is there anything else that that is that you would say is of concern?
So you have an interesting. This is an interesting session. You have a lot of new legislative members, right? And so there's a lot of bills out there right now, and probably 2/3 of them got whacked on Friday.
Right.
But they're ideas that have already been out there,
Okay.
and these people just don't know that this has already been contemplated. The returning members of the legislature who were a part of the capital budget not being passed and the Hurston Foster decision are, what we're hearing is that they're tired and they don't want to deal with sensitive topics. So there really hasn't been anything monumentally controversial, at least from a water, sewer, storm perspective.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
we haven't seen anything that we're, besides the opioid treatment plant thing, we haven't seen anything that's too crazy, which is nice.
Okay. Thanks.
Now, one thing that I remember, I think it was when I went down, it was either Brianna or Derek. First time I went down to Olympia, we spoke for the Senate Transportation Committee on the SR 166 issue. Somebody, I think it was Brianna, had explained the real life of the bill and the number of time. It's like a death by 1,000 cuts.
Exactly.
And so I don't know if that would be beneficial the next time she comes, to ask her to really explain, like when you think a bill's dead, it's not always dead.
Right.
It's intentionally put. There's a lot of politics that have to, we struck this bill, but they really didn't do it because they're going to bring it back. And I can't remember the details of it. But there's the obvious process, and then there's kind of like another process where it's not sneaky, but everybody knows when they take an action that it's going to come back in a different form, and it's going to come back into the process at this other level. So I don't know if that's a thing where you really want Brianna to spend some time to write, where we explain, the real life of the bill. I thought it was fascinating because I said, well, I thought that was dead. She goes, well, not actually, because it's over here and it's going to come back here and then it's going to go through this process. I'm like, well, who knows this stuff? And she goes, well, lobbyists.
Brianna.
So
I guess
Touché.
the short answer is it's not exactly how they depicted it on Schoolhouse Rock.
no, it's not. It's not the guy laying on the thing on the front of the steps.
All right.
So one thing that when you look at the agenda, I've changed the format a little bit. So you're going to have this legislative report discussion. So that's going to be a main header, and then we'll just continue to list House or Senate bill updates that we feel are appropriate. And if there's nothing, I'm going to keep the header, and I'll just put like no report. The next thing that I changed was I had asked Thomas to put together with VHC, who's our sewer and water purveyor, this document. So basically it's a Gantt chart because we had so many things going on that I was losing track of really where we were at. So we asked them to put a Gantt chart together that establishes basically a critical path with the key things we're working on. The Foster pilot project, the McCormick Pump Station 2, which is ours. Obviously Well 13 project as a whole, our water system plan, and then the Marina Pump Station. And so we're going to keep that as a main header, and then we'll just be kind of going through this and making sure that we're staying on our critical path. So with that, you'll see under that category, the main products. Now, one difference is you'll see in the agenda, so we have the Foster pilot project. Now there's a water rights. So the water rights is associated with the well 13, but I kept it separate because it's actually not just well 13, it's all of our wells, and it's rebalancing our water rights. So we're taking that on as a separate task. That it's not specifically listed on this Gantt chart. It's kind of embedded in a lot of areas. Then obviously I have 13 that's on the chart, which is both the site and then the work down at Maple Street, and then Pump Station 2, water system plan, the Marina Pump Station. So we're going to keep this as kind of the main header and just provide updates.
This is wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's very helpful. I want to have this plotted at 24 by 36 and put up on Thomas's wall. So
Nice.
Anyway, so I guess with that, Thomas, do you want to go through these and just kind of give us a quick update?
So, Foster Pilot Project, as we've talked about a lot, we're a part of that program through Senate Bill 6091. We have until November 15th of this year to propose our mitigation strategy for our wells, how we're going to mitigate for the environmental impacts of withdrawing water from the ground. We have tools in our toolbox that we're allowed to use that we're one of 5 purveyors in the state. So when you determine mitigation impacts, you use something called a steady state model. So you measure the impact at full build out, at full withdrawal, and you have to mitigate for that.
And that's currently in time, in place.
In time, in kind, in place. Right. So what's interesting is when you run a steady state model, right now the steady state model says we have to mitigate for half of what we withdraw. It's a huge amount, and it's spread out across basically our impacts measured from Gorse to Long Lake. Almost impossible to do. And, you know, depending on your ideas on mitigation, the impacts are pretty academic. They're immeasurable in some cases. And so because we're a part of this special project, we are allowed to do something called transient model, which says, okay, we understand that impacts might happen, but when do they happen? Is it 10 years from now? Is it 50 years from now? In some cases, it says it might be 800 years from now. Sure. And so the idea would be, okay, we'll mitigate, but we're not going to mitigate until we have an impact. Why would we over-mitigate, essentially? So you guys just approved a contract for Robinson Noble, and one of the components in that was for the transient modeling effort. Mm-hmm. If you look at the second page behind this Gantt chart, what you'll see here is sort of a combination of mitigation, records of examination, and water rights evaluation. This is our work plan just to get our water rights in order by November 15th. This is a huge, huge, heavy lift, and we don't have a choice. We have to get this into ecology so that they can make the recommendation to the legislature. If you kind of zoom out and you really are at the 50,000 foot level, we have completed step 1 of 4 in kind of this holistic approach to the city's water right situation. We're taking all of our wells and redistributing our water rights through change applications with the Department of Ecology to move those rights into areas where we can, utilize them. Well 13, well 12, let gravity do its thing. And like I said, we've completed step 1. The contract that you guys approved with Robinson Noble will get us, we will get through steps 2 and step 3. The final step number 4, you don't get until you've put the full amount of water to beneficial use. So it won't happen for years and years and years. But step 3 is really when you've kind of arrived. That's when you have a certificated right. And I think that we're going to be able to get there. And the nice thing is that if this goes as planned, and if we can pull this off, the city will not have to do anything with water rights for decades. We wanted to take this moment in time, especially while we're a part of this pilot, to comprehensively, I don't want to say fix problems, but to set the city up in a way that we won't have to go through this very long, very expensive process. Right now, we're projecting our water rights and allocated amount out to, I believe, 2067.
Wow.
And we've been working on water rights. I think we first brought on Thomas Poores in 2014, 2013.
That was 20. It was the end of 2015.
Okay, 2015. So we actively knew that given the well 10, 13 project, well 9, well 5, 1, 2, and 3, 7, that 11, now 12. We knew that once we finally had actual source production values, that we needed to transfer water rights as we are decommissioning others, like 1, 2, and 3, 5, 7, these old artesian wells. So as we're decommissioning the artesian wells, and then we're basically certifying and putting to beneficial use the deep aquifers, which 11, which was the well field out at McCormick, we've drilled that into the deep aquifer. We've not connected it yet, but it's drilled. We've got obviously 12 will be in the deep aquifer, and then 13 is in the deep aquifer. That's the city's future, water for centuries. And then so, even though this kind of historically is just a very small moment in time, it's a very critical moment in time, because we're going to really rebalance everything. We found out yesterday at well 9 that it's producing at a better rate than we ever thought it would, as opposed to well 10, which wasn't producing. And so whatever water rights we had there, we're just like, no, we're going to put them to 9, because that new pump system is delivering, and the source is providing at a much higher rate. So we'll allocate more, and correct me if I'm wrong, as we balance this. We're saying, no, we're gonna shift more to 9, because we can get more out of 9.
And traditional water rights are very prescriptive. They're very locked in on a location. We're trying to give ourselves flexibility in the future so we can shift resources, rest wells and pump other wells, do some really cool things. And I think it's important to note that as difficult and drawn out and expensive as this process is, we get this done and we are no longer spending $500,000 plus on water a year to Bremerton. So over time, the amount of money that it will take to get this work done will pale in comparison to what we've historically paid for purchased water and what we will pay in the future. So, moving on, well number 13, the site is almost cleared. So it's been cleared of all trees and vegetation. They had to dig out sort of we call it the forest duff, and get down to some better soil. They're bringing in rock right now, and we're preparing for the driller to be on site in about a month and a half, 2 months.
So that would be
April?
Yeah, middle of April. Which will be exciting. Schneider Drilling has that contract. They're a very good well driller, one of only a few on the West Coast that can drill something like this. So that'll be exciting. We are actively working on the design for Maple. We just had a meeting out there last week where we kind of finalized road widths and road sections, and we've got to do a little bit more surveying work to pick up a couple of different things, and working through easements. We're going to directionally drill the majority of that water main, which is huge because we don't have to open cut through an easement in a cemetery. Nobody wants to do that. By doing the
I don't even want to go there.
By doing the directional drilling, we're actually going to be able to eliminate the soldier pile wall that was going to have to go in, which is a cost savings to the city. So that's great. The next part,
it's also gonna, working with the owner of the property, because the city had vacated that right of way, and there was a misunderstanding on that. Even though it was vacated, we maintained an easement right, and So obviously when we were meeting with the property owner of the cemetery, there was a lot of consternation about us having a heavy equipment,
Sure.
digging through that 15-foot strip. This is gonna be literally, it's like what we're doing down here for the Rockwell Park. We're directionally boring under 16, or Puget Sound Energy is Patelco. So we'll be able to directional dig, and it'll be no disturbance.
And the nice thing, and when in the inception of this project, when Mark had applied to the Department of Health, one of the big concerns and why we had to purchase that house on Maple and do the things we were doing is we wanted to get off the edge of that ravine. Because if there's ever an earthquake, that water main, which is a huge main for the city, would be in jeopardy. So the project initially had shifted that water main over, but from a constructability standpoint, you can only go so deep. Well, the deeper you go, the more secure that main will be. As we directionally drill it, we're going to be between 15 and 20 feet deep. So that main's going to be really secure going through there.
But we're still gonna, we're still moving the road over. And I think we're gonna try to open that site up as much as we can to provide not just the well 6 kind of facility and what we need for the well 13 project. But I think we're gonna try to maybe get some room that we could put some sort of a metal building to stage a sanding truck or something. We're trying to use it as a public works facility on the east side of town as well.
It's still going to be a pretty small site, but we're definitely taking advantage of any area.
And that's why we bought the house, so we can take that hill down and open it up for us. So
the next part,
then the PRVs,
Yep.
pressure reducing valves.
That's kind of tied to the water system plan. We're finalizing our model, which tells us pressures and fire flow and all this other stuff. But we're using that model to determine the PRV locations. I just had a meeting a week and a half ago to go over where those could sit.
And that's so that the city's, basically with well 13, we're going to be a top-down city, and especially with well 12 as well. Where historically, because of our shoreline development, artesian, we've always been a bottom-up, and we're flipping it.
Yeah, well, yes. For the first time, we're going to have true flexibility and redundancy because we have the Melcher pump station, which can pump up. Now we're going to have PRVs that allow it to flow down. So from a water quality perspective, we will be able to exchange water in a way that we've never been able to do, which reduces stagnation. It lowers the amount of chlorine that's being kind of eaten up because that water's stagnant. So we'll be able to move that water around in different ways, and you'll see an increase in water quality. And we'll get to water quality.
So the pressure reducing valves allow us to, because we've got the 260, the 390, the 580, and the 660. Those are our pressure zones. P equals gamma H, pressure equals the specific weight of water times the height, the head. Well, I don't know that. And so you've got these pressure zones that obviously if we were providing water from well 13 down to your house, if we just provided a pipe, your hot water heater would blow through your roof because it would be 287 psi.
I'd like to see that one.
So you have
I wouldn't.
so from the top down, we're trying to maintain. I mean, to me, the ideal pressure, even though it says you can have 30 at a meter, that's way too low. I think to me, 60, 65 psi is ideal for operating things in your house. For a garden hose, it doesn't just trickle out and it doesn't affect your plumbing, but you have a nice robust shower.
And what is that? What figure did you say?
About 50's good. I like 60. I got 60 set at my house. That's awesome because I got a well with a variable speed pump. But the state allows 30. That's the minimum. If you got 30 psi at your meter, you're taking a shower and it's kind of dribbling on you.
What does a sprinkler system need?
The flow throughs, 30
for a house.
For fire?
Yeah, there's other variables in it.
Mm.
Yeah, it's it takes a higher value, and that's why some houses would have to do like a booster pump or some sort of a pump in their garage as opposed to just a normal flow through, because the area may not have very good pressure or flow. But I don't know what the minimum number is.
I'm not sure. The Office of Drinking Water's Water System Design Manual says 30 psi minimum. You can drop to 20 psi in a fire event.
That's the
But
residual.
that's a temporary. And then American Water Works Association recommends 60 psi as the optimal, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, Mark's right. 60 to 65 that's where you want to be if you can. You know, we have challenges. We are, you know, if you drive, you go through the Lake Chelan area, you know, it's flat. You see, you know, these reservoirs that are elevated, and they don't have to deal with, you know, the issues that we have. It's the same reason why we're lift station rich, because we have all these hills and we're, you know, pumping it up and gravitating it down, and so, you know, we have to deal with those just like everybody else on the Kitsap Peninsula. But
And it's affected by usage. So if everybody's using their water all at one time, doesn't that affect that?
it
Or
can.
not so
I mean,
much? Not
you
so
know, if you
much.
look at a reservoir, the amount of water that a reservoir actually has
Live.
operationally is relatively small. In a lot of cases, you're talking feet, because you have to have that head pressure, which is what drives the pressure at your house. So, yeah, if a reservoir is drained beyond its operational storage, you can see swings in pressure. It takes a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
it takes what, 2.34
2.38
pounds to raise water a foot. So, you know, the converse is it's going to take quite a bit of operational storage loss to reduce pressure.
And that's why when you guys drive through George and you see the big George water tank, it's on stilts, and then the tank's up here. You can't have that stagnant water down below, but they've got it up at the elevation where they set that little bubble that's sitting there is establishing their pressure for that area, and operating, like I said, in that tank that's elevated, only that top portion is the operational portion.
Don't they have these big stirring type things that they put in some of the tanks to keep that water going?
Yeah, and right now we don't have any. They're called tank mixing devices, or the way that you design the interior fill.
So that it swirls.
Okay.
So, well, as a part of the Well 13 project, we're connecting that well to the Sedgwick Reservoir. The Sedgwick Reservoir, when we put the line in, will actually go through the side of the reservoir, probably 4 feet high, through the side of the reservoir, and then come up and 90, and it's going to have valves that are angled. So when that well kicks on, it's going to stir that water. Which will be really great. We do have in our future plans, we do have some ideas about putting tank mixing valves, such as one of the leading valves is a solar bee. So at our Van Zee reservoir, we have 2 million gallons of water. We'd like to see a solar bee installed there. It's not in our comprehensive plan right now, mainly because we don't have any capacity for more. But I would anticipate that in our next comprehensive plan, you'll see some reservoir mixing.
Some retrofitting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, McCormick Pump Station 2, we're anticipating seeing a 60% design pretty soon. I'm meeting with BHC in about a week to go over some of the stuff with them. In your packet, you've got a 30%. Where there's a little red box there where we're moving a control building. It's just a little cheaper from a constructability standpoint. But this is going to be a really nice facility. And I think that it's going to mitigate for some of the challenges that we have out there. And I'm excited for that to come to fruition. That's going to be a really good station. One of the benefits of a station like this, from a control standpoint, and with the McCormick Lift Station 1 project that the developer is constructing, is we're gonna have the ability for those systems and the marina to communicate to each other differently than they ever have. So they're going to be able to say, if the marina says, hey, I just dropped a pump, so my pumping capacity is reduced, it's gonna tell Lift Station 1, hey, I need you to slow down. Lift Station 1 is gonna tell Lift Station 2, don't pump until you hit high level. So what we're gonna do through, there's a couple of different ways that you mitigate for events. One is you build in additional storage. It's incredibly expensive. So you build what makes sense. To get 15 more minutes sometimes can cost you $100,000. So you build what you can down below, but then you create what I'm calling these smart lift stations that can say slow down or stop. There's physical overrides. If lift station 2 gets to a critical point and it has to pump, then it's going to start pumping. Lift Station 1 is going to be smart enough to know, okay, I know I can only send 700 gallons a minute here, and I've got 1,200 gallons a minute going in here, so it's going to do what it can. And the final piece of it is, through this, we're going to be able to predict failure. We know that having an overflow at Lift Station 2 is worse than having an overflow at Lift Station 1. Having an overflow at Lift Station 1 is better than having an overflow at the marina, so we can control where the overflow happens to
Could
reduce
hackers
it.
get in and create havoc with
Could
smart hackers?
We keep our SCADA system completely off any
Off-grid.
network server. So you can't access the SCADA system unless you have, I think it's a 3-step process. You have to have a VPN, you have to go through the SCADA portal, and you have to have a password. So you'd have to have a physical connection, and you'd have to know how to get in. It's relatively unlikely, but the Department of Homeland Security has been very adamant that no SCADA system should be connected to a public network like City Hall's network or
But
the
yes,
others.
but it could happen. I mean,
Yeah.
Putin, if he really wanted to upset Trump, he would
Just
cause
do
the
it.
McCormick pump station to overflow.
The nice thing is, we keep our SCADA system internal to the Public Works Department, and we have the resources within the Public Works Department to fix most anything without having to contact someone else. If there was a major problem, we would have to bring in our integrator, TSI, but there's not going to be a situation where we've got to call up the city's IT department in the middle of the night. We've got guys that work, that they're very good. We actively send them to trainings. We're to the point now where we have one guy on staff who has been going and learning how to code and write this code. So in the middle of the night, if we got a problem, say one of the cards gets wiped, we can very quickly rewrite a code that will allow that system to at least function. And we back up all of our codes. We have a lot of redundancy in our SCADA system. Water system plan, we're moving forward. I think that, as you can see on the Gantt chart, we're looking at Q3 of 2019 being done with that. That's going to be a very good planning document for us. We're putting a lot into it because the Department of Health recognizes anything in your comprehensive plan is already being approved. So you don't have to go through a very lengthy, formal, and expensive review process because they've already adopted your comp plan. And it's going to talk about future improvements and a lot of different things. That'll be an exciting document. Marina Pump Station, next month we are supposed to hear some information from some folks downtown who are planning grandiose things. As you guys know, we applied for that $4.1 million rehabilitation loan.
And that's right, council just
We got it,
approved
yeah.
that.
And that was for a rehabilitation of a lift station.
Yeah, retrofit.
The developer would like us to move the lift station. That takes it from a $4.5 million project to a $10 million project. So I have communicated with the developer that's not a city cost. That's a developer cost. And so they are aware that, you know, they're gonna put a request in, they've cut their civil loose on trying to identify areas that would work for them. We've, you know, told them that we've kind of stalled as long as we can on this project, and we need to get going. Our design consultant is chomping at the bit to start doing some of this design. But if it indeed has to be moved, you know, the permit fees for the developer are going to include millions of dollars.
And I did get clarification from the mayor that now that this is approved, because like I said, we were balancing, well, the loan wasn't approved yet, and Noah said, you know, he put some money that we could kind of start working on things, but we knew that we were going to get to this point where we can't wait any longer, and so the direction I have gotten from the mayor is if this entity doesn't perform, we're going to move ahead with our retrofit, $4.5 million retrofit project. We cannot wait. And that's just, you know, and if they work something out, then they're going to have to quickly make those changes on their own nickel and make things work. But right now, my direction, and I don't know if I told you this yet, my direction is that we're moving ahead with RH2 for the retrofit in the area, whether we slide things over into Frederick right away or whatever, but we're working on this site. The relocation isn't going to happen unless this other entity really starts to perform.
How much of a relocation would it be?
We could be talking about moving it substantially. I mean, it'll still be in the general area, but it could move, like Mark said, to Frederick. It could move to, it could
Lot
be
4 or Lot 2, I mean.
Yeah, it could be an underground facility. The developer, I think, realizes, and they should realize, that if we move forward with the project that we have, and then they want it moved, they're going to be on the hook for a $10 million lift station. If they want it moved and we agree that we'll design it and then it gets moved, it's only going to cost them $5 million. So it behooves them to figure out if they really need that space or not.
But it's tied in with what the presentation was last night.
That's what I was just going to ask. Okay, so it's part of the community development.
Yes, that kits out.
Presentation on that, which could be down the road.
Right. So that's our issue: is do we wait until we know whether they're going to get that funding or not? And we just can't.
I just keep reading about all the fines going into Sinclair, and I just go, yeah, we can't wait.
No, we have to get moving on it.
And when we met with the developer a month and a half ago, that's what we told them. Is we said, hey, we're hitting a critical point. And he said, well, give me till the middle of March to figure out where, you know, what our site plans look like. And so we anticipate that next month we're going to hear something, and it'll be okay, let's go here, or nope, we're going here.
Yeah, it's going to be a go, no go.
When do they get, I know they talked about it last night, but they won't even know about the award of funding by middle of next March, middle of the month. You know, whether they got
That
the
meeting
addition.
that meeting's March 21st, I think.
Yeah, so, okay. I was just
I'm
talking
sure
out
that
loud.
they're going to have to internally know whether or not
Yeah.
they feel like they can commit to the city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think with as much as they have proposed, that if $5 million were to kill that project, then they shouldn't have been playing with that much to begin with.
Right. Okay.
So,
All right.
Okay, well, 9. So on the water quality retrofit side, the construction is basically, I'd say, substantially complete. We're kind of in startup mode here in March. So I'll just say startup is March 2019. Going through calibrating, operating, getting our O&M manual put together, getting staff up, learning how to operate. So when do you think, if we can work out some issues on getting certain things done, when do we think that is actually going to be operational and online? April?
Yeah. Maybe end of March.
Okay, we'll just say that we should be having water coming through that system, and I know I mentioned it earlier, but I heard pretty good news because when we had the other well line project, when we had those pumps on, they were supposed to have hit 600 GPM with two of the three pumps running, and then the pumps were only supposed to be running at like a 75% efficiency to get there. When we actually got it going, it took all three pumps running at like 92% to get us up to 598 GPM. It was really disappointing. We had issues with a lot of finger pointing on the pump design, and so what we got yesterday was we had two pumps running, and we were over 626, and we were only at about like 80% or something. So I was like, yes, that's where we want to be on the pump curve. So from that standpoint alone, on the pumping, we're where we wanted to be. The source was keeping up, the well pump in the source. Now obviously this has got to calibrate through the treatment, the ATEC treatment, but I was pretty excited to hear at least that side of it.
That and the new chlorination system that's in there, that old, not old, that poorly designed chlorination system that was in there would run like 22 hours a day, which is
Ridiculous.
So we were able to take that system, we're going to install that at another location that needs a new chlorination system, smaller.
That's the Chlortec.
Yep, and that'll work great for that facility. Those cells are only 2 years old. The new system that we have is
State of the art.
yeah, it's nice. So
And then on the Arizona missions, right now Brandy's going through Barracuda. She's trying to find some emails. Sharon just put a little bit of pressure in the clerk's office that we need this. I really don't think there's going to be much that's going to come out of that, though. I think there's not going to be enough. I mean, to me, it's pretty obvious that there was an error, but or an omission, but to take that to a jury or a judge, I don't think it's.
And that was the design part of it.
The flocculation system, right?
Yeah, the whole treatment through flocculation, potassium permanganate removal. So, yeah.
Thank you. That was the short version of it.
Yeah. McCormick Pump Station 1. They're submitted a revision.
unofficially, so McCormick, so they have an approval letter, the plans have been stamped, there's nothing stopping the developer from going out and constructing what was designed. They have reached out and asked if they could shift some vaults around, and we're looking at it. I marked up a plan set and sent it back to the developer, and I said, well, if you want to do that, you're going to have to do A, B, C, and D. How quickly they can turn those plans around. They're evaluating it. Ultimately, as long as there's some shoring components and nothing substantially changes, I don't think that we're opposing the differences. Operationally, it might actually make things easier. We just need them to submit, you can't just show me a picture. We got to see the structural and the, all that sort of stuff. It would straighten out a sewer bypass. So we'll see. I've got 2 emails in my inbox right now from them about it, so we'll see what happens there. But they've got an approved plan set, and they want to start digging in March.
Oh, wow.
So everything has been fabricated. They're waiting on a few more electrical components to come in. They're telling me that they believe once they start digging, 90 to 110 days, they'll have that station online. So, I mean, it's not far-fetched to say that for sure by the end of the year, we have a brand new, very nice lift station in McCormick 1.
A lot of projects.
Yeah. But, you know, I'm loving the fact that we're gonna have really nice pump stations at McCormick 1 and 2. You know, I was standing there watching sewage run between my legs when our generator went out at 1 and PSE wasn't willing to respond to get power back on. And there's nothing we could do about it. That was like a really frustrating.
And that's another thing that I'll bring up, you know, operationally, I know you're looking at that carpet, and I'm gonna remind you that you said no new projects, so.
I did.
You probably don't want that, but I'll give it to you anyway.
Operationally, you know, with these projects, Well 9 never had a generator. It does now. We have a new generator tow behind in our shop. The Well 13 site doesn't have a generator right now. It will with this project. It's going
There's no
to.
such thing as Well 13.
Well 6.
No. Well, the Well 13 site will.
We'll have a generator.
Yes.
You said we currently don't have one. Well, we don't have a well there.
We have a reservoir there.
Okay. Oh, okay. So there's a pump.
So, operationally, when we have these emergency events, it will reduce, these capital improvements will reduce staff time running around pumping facilities with a tow-behind generator. That is huge because that frees them up to go, you know, get roads closed or opened or remove trees from the right-of-way. So sometimes I think it's important when you look at those capital improvements to understand not just the capital component, but the personnel component that it takes when those facilities aren't
Well,
there.
especially with the way we've got SCADA now tuned in between the City of Bremerton system and the 580. That wasn't working very well. Thomas has been able to work with their SCADA folks and get that operationally working much better. That's how they're able to provide this flow because they just weren't communicating and we were having a lot of issues up there. The fact that McCormick Pump Station 1 and 2 and the Marina Pump Station, they're going to talk to each other, as we were just saying. Yeah, we've got, you know, we literally have staff during power outages that we've got the 2 generators, the bigger one and the little one, and they're literally saying, okay, we got 10 minutes to get down to Bay Street Pump Station, do that, pump that for whatever, and then, okay, now we got to get up to, you know, McCormick 1, and we've got 12 minutes to get up there before we have an overflow, and it's just, for that 2 or 3 days of power outages, that's just what they've been historically doing. And so we're making improvements.
So now we just had, hopefully we're just running diesel.
Yeah.
Keep them.
We still have sites that we'll have to get to. Some of the smaller sites we have
Like
to
Golden
get
Pond
generators.
or, you know, but,
Well, Golden Pond has a new generator.
oh, that's right, we got that in the budget.
So it's just to highlight that those capital improvements really reduce, or I don't want to say reduce, they give our staff the ability to get out there and do other things that we need to be doing.
It's not quite so critical.
Well, this gives us some flexibility. You're not right down to the seconds,
Yeah.
you know. And I know when Thomas was working out of the shop and we had conversations and he'd just say, this is really stressful. We're literally having minutes to get down and get plugged in and operational. It's just a lot of stress.
Well, and we've been fortunate, you know, had we had widespread power outages during this last snow event, there's sites we can't get to with those generators because of their size and the steep slopes, and this will reduce some of those, mitigate potential issues. So,
Okay. Yeah. So I think we'll call that an hour-long meeting here in another minute. I'll say 10:30.
So the next meeting, the third Monday, the
We're
18th,
back on March 18th if we feel
There's something.
there's something worth, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, even though we have updates, I think if the updates aren't worth, you know, having the conversation, then we'll just.
I know he'd really
Get
appreciate
it.
it because he's still learning so much about the city, and it really helps
Yep.
with touching base, right?
Feel like Forrest Gump.
Well, it's not like anyone really knows.
I know. I want to know.
I know, and it's always changing, but, right.
Worst comes to worst, get a van, do a road show for a minute.
I was gonna say, you know,
You
like
know,
I
actually,
said,
yeah, that would be pretty cool.
I think it'll be, you know, there's two things. One is you know,
Oh,
we're always available if you
I
guys have
understand.
questions.
Should we do that?
Yeah.
That'd be
If you
really
wanna-
cool.
I
We
think-
could do different ones. First the,
I think it'd be, you could combine them. Let's get well 9 online,
mhm.
and then we could do like a well 9, well 13.
And
Or-
peak at 12.
McCormick Pump
You know, I
Station
know it sounds
1.
really stupid, but, you know, I'm a concrete learner. I gotta put my hand on it.
Right.
You know, so, you know, maps and discussions, and I got generalities, but
Right.
once I put my hand on it.
Well, there's
it's there.
nothing saying that we can't do one meeting where we take
No,
everybody
I'm
to all
just
the.
throwing it as an offer, just to.
We just drive
say,
around.
You know, if we, even if it's like, you know, we don't have enough, let's just, you know, get a van and go in a car and just, you know,
If-
hit some
if-
sites for an hour, that's all.
Yeah, if staff can afford the time.
Right.
get
Well, we
back
could
what
do water systems one day,
That'd be fun.
main
I'd love that.
But-
source and storage. So you could,
To see.
just so you know.
We should get them up there when they're drilling. If you've not seen a well being drilled,
No.
it's,
I saw part of 10.
yeah.
Yeah, so you can do, yeah, we can, but, you know, so we've got, I mean, just what we did down here, we still have to deal with that one free-flowing, and put that into that dog feeding system or whatever we were gonna do. I guess that's got enough, the correction active.
Well, are we done with our meeting now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're adjourned. then.
We're good.
So I have a quick question.